That is not normal water pressure. So that's a symptom, right? I've set the water pressure for the house to vary between 1.5 and 2.5 bars. This is well below 1.5 bars. So that's the symptom. Let's see what's actually going on. So here I am in the cellar. I should mention I'm on a well pump. And so for the longest time, I thought the issue was with the water boiler because it was happening, it was much more pronounced on the hot water line than on the cold water line. And so I thought, gee, maybe I made a mistake in installation of the hot water boiler. Maybe I should have put an expansion tank on it, which by the way is a best practice on a hot water boiler. You need an expansion tank, especially if its capacity is bigger than 100 liters or 150 liters. Mine is right at the threshold, so to speak, at 150 liters. But that didn't happen to be the issue. It's actually a burst rubber bag inside the expansion tank off the well pump. I also checked the pressure regulator of the well pump. I checked it and the parameters are fine. It's varying between 1.5 and 2.5 bars. So the well pump is working fine, even though it's quite an old one. Well, old one. 2018 is when I bought it, I think, or 2017, probably 2018. But these days, with the lifetime of these products that you buy, I'm surprised that it's been lasting this long. So, yeah. The issue, like I said, is with a burst bag inside of the expansion tank. Let me see if I can show you what a burst bag looks like. Okay. Can you see water coming out of the valve? That's a clear sign that the rubber bag has been compromised. So, yeah, let me stick this back on there so it's not dripping water all over the floor here. But that's how I know what the issue is. Now, if I had the time, what I would do is I would service the bag inside the expansion tank. I would open up this plate and pull out the rubber bag, replace it with a new one, stick it back on, make sure there's no leaks, and there you go, job done. But I don't have the time. Right now I'm involved with other projects, and so this is exactly why I purchased a second well pump, a spare one, that's ready to go. So that's what I'm going to do. By the way, if you've noticed the tires underneath the well pump, yeah, they're there for a reason. I was experimenting with seeing if it helps with the noise that the well pump makes, and it doesn't. It's still just as loud. It's a good pump, very loud. So at some point in the future, those tires will go to the dump, and I'll just install the pump on the wall like it's supposed to be installed. Yeah. Okay, so the new water pump has been installed, and or I've installed it rather. And I'd just like to point out a few things in case you're interested. So I redid the installation, the water inlet and the water outlet up to the filters and even beyond the filters a little bit. But what I want to point out is that in the States you don't have these pipes, or at least they're not used in this manner very often. I haven't seen them be used that way. These are polyethylene pipes, or more precisely high density polyethylene pipes. Your PEX pipes in the States, which are very common, are also polyethylene, but that I believe is cross-linked, and it's just a different thickness and texture. These are very hard, and yet they are also flexible. And they come in these rolls of 5 feet diameter. And so unfortunately, you can't ever really get straight corners with them, or that they won't lay straight because they come in a roll from the factory. So they're always going to have a little bit of curve to them. Now, you can, of course, use supports to try to keep them straight, but even when you do, you see there's a little bow in the line there, and it's not because of the weight of this. So just FYI, the really good pipes, the connections are made with these fittings that do not degrade even in UV light and sunlight. They stay the same color, the same, they keep their strength, they don't crack. and you only use your hands to tighten them. And so that's really cool. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to point out is I've installed a pressure relief valve, and they actually recommend this, I think, in the book for the water pump too. This one's set at 8 bars, so if the pressure should ever exceed 8 bars, which I hope it never does, this will automatically eject the extra pressure through this hose, which will drain away. So that's another thing I wanted to point out. The strange termination here is for the water pipe that goes outside, which I've discontinued. I've disconnected entirely for the winter. And so this is just a fitting. It's an end cap for a pipe, for these polyethylene pipes. Okay, the other thing I want to point out, which I've wanted to do for some time, but I kept putting it off, is to install a pressure gauge. Actually, it's a pressure and temperature gauge on the water coming in from the well. And so this is supposed to be, right, this pump needs to be primed, and so this pipe needs to be filled with water going all the way to the well, which goes underneath the ground over there. So then you might think, what in the world is the point of installing a gauge on this pipe? Because if it's not pressurized, you know you won't be pulling in water. Right. But if the foot valve or the spring check valve that sits at the end of this pipe in the well were to fail, how would you know it failed? So I like to know these things, and this is why I installed a pressure gauge. And now this tells me, and it's holding the pressure steady, and it tells me that the check valve is working just fine. I also want to know the temperature of the water coming in from the well. Now, I would have appreciated this temperature gauge to be more detailed in this particular region up to 40 degrees, right? Because the well water, if it ever gets above 40 degrees here, you got bigger problems. But I just want to know when it approaches 0 degrees. Now, right now it's at, I would say about 8 degrees Celsius. So I want to know if it's approaching 0 degrees, because that's when I'm going to use something like this, which is a pipe heater. It has a small resistance in the wire, and it prevents the pipe from freezing over. Frankly, here in this setup in my cellar, I don't really need the pipe heater, because I've got my photovoltaic set up over there, and it keeps the room fairly cozy even in winter. But just in case, you know, I want to know these things. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it for this video. And yes, of course, the pressure is holding fine now. Yes, that was the other thing I wanted to mention. The pressure right now is at almost 3, 2.5, 2.6. Yeah, about 2.5. I've also installed an expansion tank on my hot water heater. Now that also had a bleed valve, so I didn't really need the expansion tank. It's also a technical space there, a mechanical room or semi-mechanical room, so if it leaks a little bit on the floor, it doesn't matter that much. But I did install a pressure tank on that to help, perhaps, I'm hoping, to buffer the hot water pressure as I'm using it in the shower or the other faucets. So I think I'm done now. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say for this video. Thanks for watching.